this past weekend, the Bulls had their participated in the NBA draft, but the Blackhawks also participated in the NHL draft. And you know what? There was a lot of, I don't know, a lot of head scratching that was going on. It was interesting because of the fact that there's a lot of people who were really talking about Turcotte and Bowen Bynum being the top two names that have been associated with the Blackhawks, and their time came, and so we're looking at. I'm excited. I'm wondering who they're going to get, and they drafted kid Kirby Dach, and I was just I texted a couple of writers like, oh, what the hell, Bobby? So you want to reach out to another guy who covers the Hawks, and I want to get his take on it. You can find him on Twitter at Puckin' Hostel. Man, I love that. That could be one of the best handles ever. He's a writer for the Rink Officials. Welcome back to Shawn and Maya, Jeff Osborn. Jeff, what's up, Papa? How are you? Thanks for tuning in and for calling in, buddy.
Oh, of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Who is Kirby Dach? Because I thought it was Turcotte or it was Byram, one of those two guys. And, man, you talk about throwing a nasty slider, a wicked curveball. Stan Bowman did just that.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby Dach, he's a big player. They needed some size, and I felt this way all along, that they needed some size up the middle. I mean, they sold us on, or a lot of writers, I should say, sold us on the fact that, the Blackhawks have to pick the best available player, and that best available player is Bowen Byram. I don't know that necessarily that's what they needed. They have a ton of young defensive players in the system, and they may not be to the to the level that Bowen Byram was, but they're pretty close. I mean, Adam Boqvist is pretty close. So, they need to start replenishing those high-end forwards, and that's what Stan Bowman went out and did, and that's what I was hoping he would do. I was kind of on the, we get what the media feeds us, and the media fed us that, they were interested in Alex Turcotte. But really, there was a group of about 5 different guys in that group, and Kirby Dach was one of them, and Peyton Krebs, and there was a few of them in that group that the Blackhawks could have legitimately picked. They could have picked, Podkolzin, who's the Russian as well. So there was there was that one group of like 1B players that they could have chosen from, and they just felt that, I guess, ultimately, over Dylan Cousins or any of those other guys, that Kirby Dach had what they were looking for as far as, his attitude and the way he looks at the game. Because I really think that at the end of the day, really what pushes any player over is what happens in the interviews and how Stan Bowman feels that player, interviewed with them.
It was, so you're telling me I can come off the ledge and Kirby Dach is going to be a productive player for our Blackhawks?
Yes. Yeah, I think he will be. Yeah. I don't think any of them are going to be busts. Like, I don't think Turcotte would be a bust. I don't think any of those forwards are necessarily be a bust, and they were all real close. So it's really splitting hairs at that point. It's what you want particularly in those forwards. They could have picked Dylan Cousins. They could have picked Alex Turcotte. They could have, again, Podkolzin. It just depended on what they wanted. Kirby Dach can play both center and he can play wing. You can ease him into the lineup. You could put him at wing to get him used to playing in the NHL and then slide him over to center when you eventually need him. But he can be a high-end NHL center with size. He's 6'4". He's already 200 pounds. By the time he fills out, he could be in the 220 range, 215, 220 range. That's a big body, and he's played playoff style hockey. He doesn't shy away from contact, and it's been noted in the past that the Blackhawks drafted a lot of guys who were not into the playoff physicality type. And, maybe they could hang in there, but they were not labeled as physical type players. Now, Kirby Dach is a physical type player. He's a little closer to the Dylan Strome type of player. And I'm not going to say, he equals Dylan Strome or whatever, but he's a big guy. He skating isn't necessarily his forte, but he's very talented. He has good hands. He thinks the game well. I think, it surprised me. I didn't think they were going to take Kirby Dach, but I don't hate it either. I would rather that they really picked a forward and they went all in on Adam Boqvist last year, and they told us he could be the next, Erik Karlsson. Well, if he's going to be the next Erik Karlsson is a number one defenseman in the NHL and a perennial all-star. If he can be the next Erik Karlsson, you already have that guy. And a lot of people were kind of poo-pooing Adam Boqvist and kind of putting him down and setting him down a level. But, if they went all in on him last year, man, you have to go all in. You can't just change midstream all of a sudden and decide that, he's not your guy now. So they haven't drafted a high-end forward in a long time, and it's about time they did, and I'm kind of glad they did.
Guys, we're talking to Jeff Osborn from the Rink official, talking a little Blackhawks hockey right here on Shawn and Maya in the morning. So they got Adam Boqvist last year, and they got Kirby Dach this year. Kirby Dach, he's 18. Is he going to be in the NHL this year, or how many years of seasoning does he need before he hits the West Side?
Well, right now they're actually having a press conference while we're talking about Kirby Dach, and they're going to give him every chance to make the roster from what they've said. Right now, it's a 50-50 thing. It depends on what he does in camp, how he looks with these, adults rather than playing against kids. But he has an adult body, and he's not afraid to use it. So he could and it's really a 50-50. It's what's going to happen in camp. And I can't predict what he's going to do in camp. But if he has a really good camp, the Blackhawks are, they're going to give him at least the 9 games. And if he does all right in those 9 games, they may hang on to him for the rest of the year. But it wouldn't hurt him to go back to the WHL for one more year just to kind of work on some of his fine tuning and then come up next year. But I really think that, honestly, he's probably going to play wing for at least a year or two until he really settles into the NHL.
They need help in the defenseman group. What do they do there to help that group? Because you have a lot, I think what happened in St. Louis, and I hate the Blues, St. Louis Blues, that is, but I love what they did. In January, 3rd, 4th, 5th, somewhere in there, they're in last place in the division. And 6 months later, they're hoisting the cup, which tells me it can be done. Which says, Blackhawks, you can do it. But they need help with the defense. Why did they not deal with that? Or was the trade part of one of the things that they did to address the defense?
Well, there's 2 things. The Alimata trade can be a sneaky trade. Again, the Blackhawks went out and traded for a bunch of players last year, and most of those players were the guys that on their old teams, they weren't really well respected, I should say. Dylan Strome was kind of looked at as maybe a kind of a bust. Same with Brandon Perlini. Drake Caggiula had kind of lost favor with his coach. Brandon Manning, of course, they traded him because they got rid of him. But, they went out there and they got some players who needed a change of scenery, and they did the same thing with, getting John Quenneville. But we could maybe talk about that later. But Alimata is still young. He's 24 years old. He was a former first-round draft pick. He's kind of a Nicholas Hjalmarsson light type player when he's healthy. He's had cancer, so that set him back. He hasn't been healthy in a while. But if he can be healthy this year, you could slot him in to the 3-4 pair or the 3-4 slot and be a shutdown type defenseman. And that could be a sneaky under the radar type player because Dominic Cahoon was just a depth player that they gave up, a depth player in a really low round draft pick. They really didn't give up much to get this kid. So they bring him in here and they bring him in with this culture, and he's got 2 Stanley Cups. I think they got him fairly cheaply. And I think he can I think he could really surprise some people.
The more I was reading at him, and I'm like, wait a minute, what's wrong? The guy's a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, former first-round pick. Like, was he underperforming so badly? Did they win the cup despite of him? Because you don't just give up a defenseman on your Stanley Cup winning team, because defensemen play such a huge role, not just in hockey, but especially when you get deep in the playoffs and you're a playoff and Stanley Cup contending team or Stanley Cup winning team. Your defenseman has to be good because you just can't let your goalie get peppered by 75 shots a game. So I'm wondering why they let him go. And from my readings and And listening to other analysts that they had called in, he just didn't live up to everything that they anticipated or expected of him as a first round pick. So when they got him, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this could be an actual good signing if this guy, performed to the level that people anticipated or expected of him as a first round pick, and that would really go a long way because, man, Jeff, our defensemen need work. If there's some way in God's green earth that Brent Seabrook signs a no waive or gets rid of his no waive clause, I think he would be the mayor of Chicago.
Yeah, that contract really has him hamstrung. Not necessarily because of the money anymore. I mean, sure, it would be nice to have that money to be able to spend somewhere else, but it's not. I mean, they're going to have $15 million or so to spend in free agency if they want. It's not really the money anymore that are holding him back. It's the fact that he's, a $7 million player that they're going to have to play him. You're not just going to sit a $7 million player in the press box. So he's going to have to play, and you're going to have, a third pair $7 million player. And that's, not ideal for sure. So you'd like to be able to clear that space up. Plus, they've got like 7 or 8 NHL level defensemen already that didn't do that well last year. And now you have to try to move some of those guys out of there so you can get new guys in there to try and improve that defense. Keith, Seabrook, Gustafson, Murphy, among others that, and then you have people like Dahlstrom and Cuckoo and players like that they're going to all have on the roster. They don't have enough room for all of them. So something's going to have to happen. Stan's going to have to make some trades to, maybe clear out some people and then, maybe some of these new guys, because Jokiharju is going to come up. He's going to have to play, and he could improve their defense. And yeah, it's something that, I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight when we have our podcast is that, Jokiharju and Mata are both Finnish, and they both played together, on the national teams. So they have some familiarity. So you may see Ali Mata and Henry Jokiharju play together, and that would not necessarily might not be a bad thing because look what happened with, Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat. They found magic together. So they
did pretty good. 47 goals.
Yeah, you can't discount that. So if those guys are familiar with each other and they like each other and they play well together, you never know. You never know what could happen.
That's a great point, guys. We're talking to Jeff Osborn from the Rink officials, talking a little Blackhawks hockey right here, Shawn and Maya in the morning. And it really could that could be a scouting strategy. Bringing guys who played with guys that we have, who have maybe been successful with guys that we've had in the past, maybe and rebuilt and rekindle that chemistry that they have just on a different level. I think is that a valid possibility what the Hawks are doing?
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's really, you never know. It may have not worked with Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat, but they had such chemistry. And really, the reason Dylan Strome got drafted as high as he did was because Alex DeBrincat was playing with him. So, that made sense. It's not necessarily as, cut and dried with these other guys, but, it's sometimes it works, and Stan's going to know better than we are, when he talks to a player, do you play well with this guy? Are you used to playing with him? That kind of thing. So only Stan and those players really know if there's a legitimate chemistry with these guys, but it's very well a possibility.
Anyone else that they drafted? They drafted Alec Vlasic, Michael Tepley, Antti Sorella, Dominic Bass or Basse, and then who's the last set? Cole Boberg. Any of these other guys, should we keep an eye out for any of these guys, or these guys just guys?
Vlasic could be a steal. The guy's huge, and he's something they don't have a lot of in the system. He's 6'6" at 18 years old and weighs 200 pounds. He's a big guy, but he's not gonna come out there and score you 50 goals as a defenseman. He's a defensive defenseman, which again is something they don't have a lot of in their system. And they can bring him up. He's a hometown guy. He could be a steal. A lot of people had him, ranked in the first round, and the Blackhawks stole him in the second round.
What name?
Alex Vlasic.
Oh, Vlasic. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, he's a Chicago guy. He's really stoked to be here. But he's going to go to Boston.
Really?
Or I think it's BU or Boston. I think BU or Boston College next year, and he'll probably spend a couple years there. He's going to need a little bit of refining and fine tuning because his skating really isn't necessarily NHL quality or pro level quality yet. But that's fine. So you by picking up Ali Mata, you buy yourself a couple of years to then develop Alex Vlasic. So that's I really honestly like what Stan Bowman's done since they dropped the puck for Game 1 last year. Most of the moves that Stan Bowman has made over the last year have been really well. I really like them.
Yeah, I'm looking at a little more, just grabbing some more information on Alex Vlasic. I didn't realize it. Well, Matt, was he a New Trier guy? Is he I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where he went, but yeah, his family's lived here. I mean, they did some interviews with him, and he was actually in the United Center, for many of the playoff wins, but his cousin is Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who's one of the best shutdown defenders in the entire NHL with San Jose. So he's got a pedigree, and he's got size, and he comes from the U.S. National program, which they had, I don't know, something like 9 or 10 people drafted, which is unreal for one 20-person team. So I mean, he's got a high pedigree and everything. So I think he's gonna turn out to be a steal for this draft. The other guys, I mean, you never know what you're gonna get. They're 18-year-old kids. Some of these guys played over in Europe. You don't know what's gonna happen with them, but that's what scouts are paid for. So
yeah. Moving forward, looking at the totality of the season, let's talk about the goalie position. Corey Crawford is in the last year of his contract. Colin Delia has seemed to be a decent backup last year. Give me your thoughts on that goaltender situation, especially Corey Crawford, because I'm a little leery. One more slam in the back of the head off the crossbar, and his career could be over.
Yeah, well, and I think that there's an outside chance they could offer him a lower dollar contract next year just to come back and maybe, help Colin Delia along. Right now, I mean, they have Delia, which, he played, everyone knows his story and how well he's played. I'm a big Delia fan. I think he can, be a good starting goalie in the NHL. From there, you don't know, but, there's Kevin Lankinen, who did really well. He played in the double IHF. He wasn't even supposed to play, and then ended up being their starting goalie for Finland and played really well, of course, because they won. And so they have that pedigree coming back to play, and he'll probably be the number one in Rockford. And then they've got Matt Tompkins, who he's kind of a tweener guy that played between the ECHL and the AHL. He played really well last year. They have Alexis Gravel, who's he's a prospect. He's probably going to, go back to where he was before. I think he's playing in the QMJHL. He's, lefty, really good. Had a good year. I like what I've seen out of him. He's played really well. So they've got some decent goalies in the system. They may go out and get, some kind of, AHL, NHL tweener guy to maybe play in Rockford and kind of help mentor Lankinen a little bit, just so they have a little bit of extra goalie depth. But I think they're okay right now. They're going to have to look next summer, though. I mean, depending on how Delia plays this season, I think is going to make a big difference on what they do with Corey Crawford, whether they offer him anything or if they just let him go. But I think based on the past with the Blackhawks, I think they may kind of offer, Crawford some kind of incentive laden deal because he has been injured a lot and maybe, a little bit of a pay cut. But you never know. He may not want that. He may want to go out there and test the free agent market and go for a $7 million 3-year deal or something like that. So we really don't know what Crawford's intentions are or what Stan Bowman's intentions are at this point in time. We'll probably know a little bit more after the free agent period.
Guys, I'm talking to Jeff Osborn from the Rink official, talking NHL hockey right here, Shawn Sierra in the morning. Yeah, I'm a little concerned, with Corey Crawford. Like I said, he's a young kid. We saw at the rally a couple of years ago. It's just his overall quality of life. For me, I just, two-time Stanley Cup winning champion is awesome. But just to put himself in that spot, it worries me a little bit. And, as an athlete, you don't worry about that stuff. You just want to play and play as long as you can. But, I want him to do well. I don't want him to be, a vegetable. So I'm just wondering what he does, and just hoping and praying that really he doesn't get another rush to the net, doesn't send him sprawling backwards and hit the crossbar. Just because I think if he goes down, I think the psychological effect it'll have on the team is different. But if he's healthy, if he's able to stay healthy the majority of the season or all of the season, man, I'm telling you, I don't see why the Hawks really can't contend. Your thoughts? Because I think they have a puncher's chance, so to speak. Had they made the playoffs last year, they can score goals. The only problem is they tend to give up more goals than they score, but they can score goals. And I'll take a puncher's chance versus no chance at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll make the playoffs. I think they will. They've got enough talent, and I think they've made a lot of really good moves. They're sneaky under the radar, and that's what I really wanted to see from Stan Bowman was like a sly move, those sneaky ones, and the Alimata one is just another one that he's made, probably like 4 or 5 in a row. So I think they'll make the playoffs, but they're going to have to go out in free agent period, and they're going to have to sign some players, some depth players. That's what they really need. And I think if my honest opinion, and this is just my opinion, is that the defense is going to get better if you get some better depth forwards to help out that defense. I don't think the defense, I don't think they're terrible players. They're all pretty good players, I think. I have my opinions on Eric Gustafsson as a defensive guy, but he does score goals. But I think if you put this group together with some solid depth, bottom 6 forwards that can play defense, that can come back and help out, I think the defense itself is going to get better just by the fact that, they have more help out there. I think they're kind of put out on an island. The bottom 6 for the Blackhawks were not that good last year. They didn't provide a whole lot of scoring. The third line was kind of just where you put those players where you had nowhere, you put these guys there that you had nowhere else to put them. And the fourth line was kind of So, I think by getting some sneaky signings in the free agent period, maybe I like Michael Furland. I like, Ryan Dzingel. Those guys are responsible players. You can play them up and down the lineup, kind of like what you heard from Dominic Cahoon. Then you got some guys like Dominic Kubalik, who they got in a trade last year. He's coming over from Europe. He's a scorer. He's a playmaker. You might be able to throw him on the third line, or, maybe he surprises some people and moves up and plays higher, first line or second line. And then Whedon, he's another player that they brought over from Europe. Those guys are going to be some depth players as well. So I think they could definitely make the playoffs. I mean, they did last year with the garbage defense they had. They almost made the playoffs. They kind of faltered at the end, but if they had a little bit better depth, they could have snuck into the playoffs. And so this year they could come in, maybe win a round if Corey Crawford stays healthy all year long. But I don't see them, contending for a cup just yet. I think they have a little bit, I think they have a little bit to go. They have a little bit of growing. They have to, those young defensemen, they have to bring those guys into the lineup. And, I think Stan might have to make a couple hard decisions this summer to move some players out that maybe he necessarily didn't want to, but needs to make room for these young guys to come up.
Guys, that's Jeff Osborn. Great stuff, buddy. Do me a favor. Let everyone know they can find you and your work online.
Yeah. At the-rink.com. That's where all of our writing is. We have a podcast, which is called the Blackhawks Rinkcast. You can find it on all your podcatchers and stuff. You could find it at our website. I'm at Puck and Hostel on Twitter. We also have the Rink Official.
I love that handle, dude.
Thanks, man. It's a metal meld with metal and hockey. It fit perfectly for me. So, but the Rink Official online as well on Twitter. You can find all of our writing. We just brought on a bunch of new writers. We're gonna have a really robust staff this year, so we're really excited for what as the Blackhawks grow, we're growing. and we're really looking forward to this next year.